Are we here? We are live, Peace and Wellness family. I hope that y'all are well and happy and whole and all that good stuff. I am the Queen Poe, and my intention for this video is for us to have a conversation about the film One Battle After Another. It is the latest Paul Thomas Anderson release, and it stars Teyana Taylor, Leonardo DiCaprio, Regina Hall, Sean Penn, and many, many others. Some surprise guests like Wood Harris. I didn't even know Wood Harris was going to be in this film. If you don't know who Wood Harris is, he's Avon from The Wire. Okay, I had no idea he was going to be in this film. They are calling, and when I say they, I'm talking about critics, people who do reviews, all of the critics, right, are calling this film the movie of the year. People are saying this is going to be a #1 contender for Golden Globes and Oscars and all of that. Now, let's keep in mind other movies that came out this year. In April, we had Sinners, Ryan Coogler's Sinners, starring Michael B. Jordan. We also had Weapons, which was a horror movie that came out, I want to say in that Weapons is fairly new. I want to say August, maybe September Weapons came out, but they were saying that movie was like going to be film of the year. I feel like as we draw closer to the end of the year, everything that comes out every month, there's going to be at least one movie of the year for the month, for the rest of the year, right? Because keep in mind, we have the second part of Wicked coming out in November. So I really think we'll have at least a couple of more of these conversations about what is going to be the movie of the year. But I wanted us to have a conversation about this film specifically because this is a film that I do foresee being a huge contender for Oscars and Golden Globes against Sinners. I'm noticing that this film is generating a lot of attention and conversation in alignment with how Sinners was. I remember when Sinners first dropped, people were going to see it 2, 3, 4 times. There were all kinds of think pieces and articles. This film is having that same type of conversation. So I wanted us to talk about some of the hidden messages, themes, as well as challenges that this film is bringing up. And I want to be clear here. My intention is to be as objective as possible. I'm going to tell you right now, there will be some spoilers. I would hope that you didn't click on a review hoping for the movie to not be spoiled. I talked about this film a little bit on my socials and people was like, you should have said spoiler alert. I'm like, if you see that it says review, I would hope that you automatically know. More than likely, if I'm reviewing a film, there might be a spoiler or two. So spoiler alert, I will be sharing a lot of detail about the movie because we need to in order for us to be able to have these deeper conversations about some of the themes, right? I also want to talk about some of the challenges because there are some challenges that this movie presents, huh? And we will get into that very quickly. Now, I have to acknowledge my tribe. Shout out to the wellness community, Butterflies in the Sky. I see y'all in the chat. And y'all know how I feel about this movie. I kind of have been talking about it a little bit during our thoughts and feels sessions for our book of the month and watch parties and all of that. I've been bringing up little pieces of it, but this is going to be the more in-depth conversation. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. Now, when I heard about this movie, I saw the trailer first, right? And I think I saw the trailer when I went to watch another film, right? But I remember sitting in the iPic theater and seeing the trailer for this film and being like, oh, okay, Teyana Taylor, come on now. And I'm a Teyana Taylor fan. I love Teyana Taylor down. She is very close with a family member of mine. And I love her down. I support anything she's in. I saw Regina Hall. I was like, I'm here for it. And once I heard that this film was all about revolution, I'm in. Now, the irony of it is this film dropped the same day that Assata Shakur transitioned. I want y'all to hold on to that because that's going to be a part of a necessary conversation. This film dropped the same day that the revolutionary Assata Shakur transitioned. So this film that's all dropped the same day. My it's playing on my phone as well. But so for Assata Shakur, this revolutionary who is exalted in the revolutionary communities, right? For her to transition and for this film to drop, I said, oh my God, this is divine alignment. This is going to be good. Let's see where we go. I go to the iPick Theater. I have my little, I got my little drink, order my food, spicy tuna on crispy rice. I'm like, let's get to it. Now, keep in mind, this movie is 3 hours long. This movie is 3 hours long. So it's Titanic level. Okay. I said, okay, I need to be comfortable, huh? Because we're going to be here for a minute. I sit in the theater, and as soon as the film come on, we're going to unpack like the first 30 minutes. The first 30 minutes of the film is centered around a character named Perfidia. Now, what's important for y'all to understand is that this movie is not this creative idea that Paul Thomas Anderson came up with on his own. This is an adaptation of a book. I believe that the book is called Vineyard or Vineyard. Let me see. I wrote it down somewhere. Because I read like a short, it's called Vineland. The book is called Vineland. It came out in 1990s. And I read like a short synopsis on the book because I wanted to have some idea of where we were going. And that book is really essentially about radical revolution, right? Like how radical can we get, or how radical do you need to get in order to revolt and potentially overthrow a system, including systemic oppression, right? So Paul Thomas Anderson did his own adaptation of this book. That is important for a future conversation we will have. The first 30 minutes of the film is centered around Perfidia, who is played by Teyana Taylor. She is a young, radical, revolutionary Black woman. Teyana Taylor, Perfidia's partner, is Bob, who is played by Leonardo DiCaprio. So I'm like, oh, okay, because I'm going to be honest. Going in, I didn't know that they were going to be a couple. So I'm like, okay, Perfidia and Bob, Teyana Taylor, Leonardo DiCaprio, they're a couple? Interesting. Okay, let's see where we are going with this. Let me describe the character of Perfidia a little bit. Young, beautiful Black woman, radical revolutionary, super passionate, very upbeat type of character. She immediately comes on the screen and she just takes over. Her energy is masterful, like high level mastering the screen, right? And shout out to the cinematography, because a lot of the shots really focused in on her face. It focused in on her eyes. And as the watcher, as the viewer of the film, we have the opportunity to really feel like we are in her mind and somewhat in the heart of her passion, right? Even the way she speaks very like strong, powerful, loud, very certain of herself, sure of herself, right? Now, we immediately know that Perfidia and Bob are in an entanglement. Shout out to Jada Pinkett. We immediately know that they are in this passionate entanglement. They are a part of this group called the French 75. The French 75 is this revolutionary organization, and they're radical revolutionaries, right? Their whole theme, and I wrote it down, is free bodies, free borders, free from fucking fear. That's like a mantra that they repeat: free bodies, free borders, free from fucking fear. And their whole goal is to essentially overthrow systemic oppression. They are capturing people. They are releasing immigrants who have been captured. And this is where the film immediately, I'm like, oh, I see what he's doing here, because he's bringing in a lot of present day issues. They mentioned the abortion ban. He's bringing in a lot of present day issues, like what's happening with immigration here. ICE taking immigrants in and capturing them and putting them into camps. They are showing themselves kind of free immigrants from these camps. They're showing themselves kind of like overthrow this idea of government, this idea of systemic oppression. They're challenging abortion bans. The group is doing these radical revolutionary acts, right? So we immediately get the idea that this French 75 organization, which is made up of diverse people of all ethnicities, Black, white, Latino, etc., they are really passionate and they are doing the work. Loving it so far, right? The relationship between Perfidia and Bob is clearly, the movie is shot and it's presented to us in the way that we are supposed to know that this relationship is important. This relationship is one of the centers of the film, right? In the first 30 minutes, they are passionately kissing. They are blowing something up. Perfidia is telling Bob, let's fuck while the bomb goes off. Let's fuck while the bomb goes off. So it's highlighting her passion, right? Immediately we know that Perfidia is this character who is not only passionate about the revolution, but her sexuality and her experience with sex and her pleasure is ignited by revolution. And I thought that that was a beautiful way to characterize her, right? That her physical pleasure, right, is ignited by political revolution, by radical revolution. So much so that she wants to fuck when the bomb is going off. Like, she's turned on by that. Now, here's where we kind of get into some challenges. Perfidia is also having relations with Colonel Lockjaw. Colonel Lockjaw is an op. His whole goal is to overthrow the French 75, the revolutionary group, right? That's his whole goal. He's trying to put a stop to them. Perfidia knows this. Within the first 30 minutes, we see this scene where Perfidia and the French 75 are kind of capturing some oppressors. Colonel Lockjaw is one of them. She turns him around. She has him now. She turns him around, has him face the wall as though she's going to arrest him. But then she goes down on him from the back. She goes down on him from the back. So you already know what this means. You already know what this look like. Basically, she eating ass. Teyana Taylor is eating Sean Penn's ass. Sean Penn is playing Colonel Lockjaw. She eating ass. Okay. Okay. Now, I know some of y'all may be like, hold on now, where are we going with this? That's how I felt once we got to that part as well. I was like, yes, from the bag, okay. Eating it from the bag, okay. Literally, he's up against the wall. She's behind him. She goes down and he starts, like, clearly, we know it's being insinuated here, right? Now, again, this is where the challenge comes in, because without going into more detail than what I'm even going in now, from the very beginning, we know that Perfidia is hypersexual. She loves sex. She loves passion. She loves pleasure. Now we know that she is having relations with two white men, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Bob, as well as Sean Penn's character, Lockjaw. One of them is a comrade of hers in the French 75 and shares passion and shares like mind with her. And he's also crazy and wild, just like her. They both have that like radical, wild energy, right? But also Lockjaw is the exact representation of what they're trying to overthrow. He is the one who is perpetuating the oppressive system, right? She's having relations with both of them. Perfidia gets pregnant. She gets pregnant. While she's pregnant, Perfidia, wild, passionate, crazy, and this is the scene in the trailer where you see Teyana Taylor shooting the AK, letting go the AK, and she's big and pregnant, right? She still has that radical revolutionary passion. She still has that wild, crazy energy about herself. She's drinking while she's pregnant. And I went to see this film twice because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything when I reviewed it. The second time I went to see it, I was taking notes. I wrote this part down where she said to him, she said to one of her comrades, she said, after I dropped this thing from my stomach, proving that she had a disconnection from the baby. So she's drinking, turning up, and she turns to her comrade and she says that they're talking about something they're going to do. And she's like, after I drop this thing from my stomach, we going to da-da-da-da-da. So proving that she has no concern or she has no connection to her baby. So this character is categorized very much as an individualist. She cares about herself and her passion. She's not concerned with this baby. She doesn't really have a connection beyond sex to any beings. It's like we are in this revolution. We care about this revolution. We care about overthrowing the system. So somewhere she has empathy somewhere when it comes to politics, but she doesn't even have a connection to the baby that's growing in her belly. Now, Let's get into a couple other characters. I want to put a pause on there because this is when we go have another conversation. Let's talk about Wood Harris. Wood Harris, Avon from The Wire, he's in this film as well. He's one of their comrades. Wood Harris is also in an interracial relationship. They show him slobbing down this white girl, and he sends her out to do this revolutionary act. This is important because in the beginning, this is all the first 30 minutes of the film. I'm loving this movie. I'm loving like where we're going here. We're talking about radical revolution, what all it takes to go into a radical revolution. And that's going to be one topic we discuss. But at the forefront of the film, it feels like they are heavily pairing radical revolution with interracial relationships, as though they are making a statement that interracial relationships are revolutionary. That's one possible theme or hidden message here, that these interracial relationships and these interracial passions are revolutionary. So much so that there's a scene where Perfidia and the rest of the French 75 are practicing, and they are in the midst of another revolutionary act. Colonel Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn, is watching them, and he is pleasuring himself while he has his binoculars and he's focused in on Perfidia. Mind you, he's an op, but it's something about Perfidia, this strong, powerful, revolutionary Black woman, that turns him on so much that he's pleasuring himself while he watches her. And then the moment that Bob approaches Perfidia and grabs her butt, he gets enraged. He's upset about that. What is the message here? What are we trying to say? And I feel like one and only person who would really be able to say what the intention of this is Paul Thomas Anderson himself. I can only talk about how I received it in that moment when I watched it both times. I feel like, once again, they were trying to pair or challenge the idea that interracial relationships are revolutionary, and that even in the interracial relationships, the fetishization of the revolutionary, radical, strong Black woman is present, whether if it's present because they share a like mind, or it's present because it's something that they want to oppress, like Lockjaw wanted to do. Lockjaw wanted to be able to control that revolutionary, powerful, strong Black woman systemically through policy as well as sexually. And then you had Bob, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, he had a like mind as her, and he wanted to be in her midst, and he was fetishizing her in a different way, in a sense of, I want you to dominate me like you are dominating this revolution, right? He was turned on when she said, let's fuck while the bomb goes off. He was turned on when she was kind of taking control and taking over, right? So that idea that in one way or another, this revolutionary Black woman is a fetish for these white men, but in different ways. What are we doing here? Why is this in the movie? What is the message here? Is this supposed to start a conversation? And I deeply feel like it was. And I say that because what I need y'all to understand, like I said in the beginning, this film is not a creative idea. Paul Thomas Anderson adopted this film from a book. In the book Vineland, Perfidia is a white woman. Perfidia is not Black. He intentionally made this character a Black woman. Why did you feel the need to do that? What was the message behind that? And what was the research that went into that? Or was there none, right? You have this beautiful Black woman who's supposed to be this radical revolutionary, and she's drinking while pregnant. She then starts to go through postpartum. She has the baby. She goes through postpartum depression, and she eventually abandons her child, right? Why did you choose to make this character a Black woman? She was not. And I think that's the part that a lot of people are missing here. This was a creative, the part of creation that he had in this film was the choice to make this character a Black woman. This was a creative decision. What was the point of that? What was the messaging behind that? And I feel like, honestly, it brings the conversation to another level, because it brings that conversation of Are interracial relationships revolutionary? Are we trying to say that the fetishization of the Black woman is a part of the revolution? What are we trying to do with this type of conversation, right? Why does that character have to be that way? I think that one of the challenges with this is the trope of the Jezebel. And wellness community, we talked about this. Shout out to Dr. Caroline West, who wrote a beautiful scholarly article called Mammy, Sapphire, Jezebel, and Her Homegirls, where she talked about the various tropes against Black women that society has really pushed to the forefront for various political reasons. And it really goes deep into desirability politics. Teyana Taylor's character, Perfidia, feeds perfectly into this Jezebel trope. Over-sexualized, showing in many ways, physically, mindset-wise, the way she moves, the way she approaches sex. And the political aspect of this is that when the Jezebel is done wrong, people lack compassion for her. When the Jezebel is abused, when the Jezebel is sexually taken advantage of, people do not have compassion for Jezebel because they say she deserves it. They say because she's radical and she's loud and she's hypersexual, when her sexuality is abused, she deserves it, right? One thing about Perfidia's character, and I'm not even getting into y'all know Salam turning it up. Okay, Salam. Okay. But one thing about Perfidia's character is that she's not even in a space where she is, how could I describe this? She's not even in a space where she is seeking compassion, right? She's not seeking compassion. She's more or less in a space where she is proud of who she is. They make it from the very beginning seem like this is her decision and seem like this is who she wants to be. She wants to be in this relationship with Bob. She feels ignited and she feels like she's in control when she is with Colonel Lockjaw. They make it seem as though she has this power, right? But also she has this power, but is oppressed by the system. Now, I want to go back a little bit before we talk about her giving birth and abandoning the baby, because this is when we bring in other characters. One of the other characters, aside from Lockjaw, Bob, Perfidia, we have to talk about Jungle Pussy. Yes. There's a Black woman in this film, and her name is Jungle Pussy. She's a part of the French 75 as well. Now, I do recognize, I didn't know this at first. Jungle Pussy is a rapper from New York in real life. In real life, the character that plays her is actually a rapper in New York, from New York. I didn't know that. I didn't know that she was just using her real rap name. But I find it interesting that that was yet another creative choice. That was another creative choice, that this Black woman would be named Jungle Pussy. She's also a part of the French 75. They make a choice, her, Perfidia, DeAndrea, who's played by Regina Hall, they make a choice to go rob a bank, right? Because they need money in order to be able to continue the revolution. When they're robbing the bank, Jungle Pussy is on top of like the counter. Y'all know how the banks have those counters, and she's giving this monologue, right? When she's giving this monologue, she's essentially going in detail about the power of the woman and the power of the pussy and all of that type of stuff in the midst of this whole revolutionary act, right? But the monologue feels, and shout out to Jungle Pussy, Sister Queen. I'm recognizing that a lot of your real life self is in this film. No shade, but we have to ask ourselves why in the context of this film did that monologue need to be had? Why do we feel that in the context of this film, one of your quotes needed to be used? And we'll get to that part later. But Jungle Pussy is given this monologue, right? Now, again, why would Paul Thomas Anderson have Perfidia? Why would he turn her into a Black woman, have her in these two interracial relationships, very hypersexualized, eating this white man's ass, okay, getting pregnant, drinking and stuff while she's pregnant? Why is the radical revolutionary Black woman immediately paired with sex? Why is the radical revolutionary Black woman paired with a lack of compassion for her own children? I already talked to y'all about the Jezebel trope used against Black women and how politically that trope is used as an excuse to say that Black women deserve sexual abuse, right? But then we also have Jungle Pussy, who is also hypersexualized. Her name is Jungle Pussy. She's also a Black woman, and she's another character that was a choice. She's another character that was a choice, right? That was a choice. What was the message behind that choice? We're going to get there. Now, Perfidia is pregnant. When in that scene where she's shooting the gun, right? And she's talking about, I feel like she said, I feel like Tony Montana, big and pregnant, shooting his gun. She turns to the sisters. This is Regina Hall, Jungle Pussy, everybody. Regina Hall's playing a character named DeAndrea. Now we're gonna talk about her in a minute. She turns to the sisters and she says, what is this? What is this? And she's pointing at her pussy. She's like, what is this? What is this? I think it was DeAndrea said, fun. She said, no, this is war. This pussy is war. This, talking about the gun, this is for fun. So here's the comparison. Pussy is for war. The guns are for fun. This radical revolutionary believes that her pussy is for war and that the guns are for fun. What is the message here? What are we really saying here? And given the grace, Paul Thomas Anderson, I feel like one of his intentions may have been to talk about the power of the pussy, the power of the pom-pom, right? And how we as cis women have vaginas and we can utilize those vaginas as a means to revolution. But do we agree with that? Do we agree with that? Do we agree that we can use the power of the pussy or pussy power in order to overcome systemic oppression? Do we agree that pussy is for war, that we can use our pussy as a weapon to control people, which will eventually control the political landscape, right? And in systemic oppression? Do we believe that? Do we believe that? Here's where we have the challenge. And let me be clear. This challenge right here is specifically for Black people. Specifically for Black people. A lot of people, like I said in the beginning, are saying that this is the movie of the year. There are a lot of Black people who are putting this film on a pedestal up against films like Sinners and Weapons and other movies as the movie of the year. If a Black man, a Black creator would have done this movie and would have had these types of characters in a movie, y'all would never allow them to get away with it. Yes, when Spike Lee had a movie called Chirac, where the whole film was centered around Black women using their pussy for revolution in their own community, Black women withholding their vagina until Black men got their shit together and using it as a means of revolution. I want y'all to go to research the criticism that Spike Lee received from his own community for that. Black women protested that movie. A Black man could never create a movie where the radical revolutionary woman is using her pussy as a means of revolution. Because when he did, the Black community slaughtered him. They slaughtered him. One of my challenges with this movie is not even for Paul Thomas Anderson, although I do want to know, why did you choose to make Perfidia a Black woman? What was your intentions with that? And also I would like to know, what was the intention of adding the character Jungle Pussy and having this Black woman's name be Jungle Pussy and her doing that whole monologue? I would want to know, did you research the Jezebel trope against Black women and how that has been used as an excuse for Black women to be sexually abused without having repercussions for the abuse against the abuser? I would like to know what was the research of this, but specifically as a Black woman, I'm asking Black people, why is it that when a white man does this, we will say this is movie of the year. We will say that this film is so full of nuance and but when a black man does this, we tear them down. And I'm saying we, because I enjoy Chirac, but I'm saying we as a black community, why do we allow white people more creative freedom with our stories than we do black people? Why? Right? Another example I'm going to give is the interracial relationship component, right? Wood Harris, the only black man in the movie, is in an interracial relationship with a white woman. Teyana Taylor is in interracial relationship with two white men and pregnant, right? Why is it that the only relationships that we see in this film are two interracial relationships and people are seeing it as nuance? But I will ask y'all this. If Ryan Coogler came out with Sinners, and Michael B. Jordan's character, Smoke and Stack, if both of them were with white women, would the black community have loved Sinners as much? If Annie was a white woman, would y'all have exalted Sinners as much? I would put money on it that y'all would not. But why is it okay for a white man to do this? Why is it okay for a white man to do this? And I'm not saying that it's wrong either way. My question for the community is, why is it either not right either way, or why is it not wrong either way? Why is it right when a white man does it, but wrong if a black person does it? Why? Why are we calling this the movie of the year when a white man does it, but if a black man did this? If Ryan Coogler had Smoke and Stack be with two white women, y'all would be in that uproar. Why are the standards different? Why are the expectations different? And I know a lot of black people would say, we as black people should not be held to the same standard as white people. This is where that's a problem. Because white people are rewarded for the standard that they're held to. They're talking about giving this movie Oscars and Golden Globes. What's interesting to me is that what it looks like and what it appears as is that white creators have a level of freedom that black creators will never have. White creators have a level of freedom to explore stories like this that black creators would never get. A black creator could have never done a film like this. I put up a post on socials and I said, if Tyler Perry would have had a character like Perfidia, if he would have had a character that was a black woman that was sleeping with two white men in the movie, that got pregnant, that was drinking during her pregnancy, abused her child, all of that, y'all would have tore Tyler Perry to shreds. Either we are going to give everybody the same level of grace or we're going to hold everybody to the same high standard. Why do we not do that? Why do we not do that? If Ryan Coogler had this type of character in Sinners, that movie would not be exalted the way it is. Why do we do that? So that's something that from up front, I just want to name. I just want to name. Let's get into other aspects of the film. The French 75 as a group, right? I love this idea of this radical revolutionary group. And I really feel like this film does a great job of challenging what it means to be a revolutionary. I think that a lot of people identify as revolutionaries without having a full idea nor research of study of what all it takes to go into being a revolutionary. I deeply feel like they don't. And I think that this film, shout out to Paul Thomas Anderson, he did a great job of showing what it looks like to be in a radical revolutionary group, what it looks like to have codes, right? Because something that was interesting was that like they had certain codes and certain mantras that in order to be able to get certain information, you had to know the code. That's how they knew that you were truly who you were and you were truly a part of the group, right? So what does it mean to have a code of ethics as a revolutionary? I feel like that was kind of a hidden message. There is an overall theme that we'll get to at the end, which the theme clearly is revolution, but the overall theme, what about the revolution, we'll talk about at the end. But one thing I loved was that he had this whole concept of What does it look like to be a revolutionary? What are the code of ethics for revolutionaries? What rules do you follow? What guidelines do you follow? If you had a revolutionary group, what would be your mantra? What would be y'all code of ethics? How would y'all live, right? Like that whole idea, I really love that that was put into the movie, because as I was watching it the first time, I'm gonna be honest, the first time I watched it, I was so taken aback by Perfidia's character, and her relationship with, especially with Lockjaw, because for me, the relationship with Lockjaw, with Bob, I understand, right? This is your comrade. Y'all share a like mind, like energy. He's white. So what? This is who you love. Love is love. Y'all have, again, like mind, like energy. He's an ally. This is your husband or your man. I love that. Even the fact that she was a freak. She want to fuck while the bomb go off. I was like, okay. When she ate Lockjaw's ass, I said, hold on now. Hold on now. Hold on now. Hard pause. Hard pause. Hard pause. When she was escorting him out and she like, yeah, get that dick up. And she was so, he was aroused when she was escorting him out. And she was so excited by this idea that he would be aroused by her to the point that when she got back in the car with her comrades, she was like, y'all think he like me? Y'all think he like black women, right? He like she was so excited by the idea that her oppressor might like her. That's when in the end of the first time, that's when I sat back like, what are we doing here, Paul? Paul, what are we doing here? Why is this radical revolutionary character excited and turned on by the idea that her oppressor might like her, right? Again, I understand why she would be in love with Bob. That's her comrade, like mine, like energy, both radical, both wild, cool. But why would you have this woman be so excited by the idea that her oppressor might be turned on by her? What are we really asking ourselves here? What's a hidden message? I feel like another hidden message in this film is really challenging everybody to ask yourself, what does it mean to not be oppressed for you? Does overcoming political oppression look like the potential of your oppressor falling in love with you? Are you really desiring to be seen by your oppressor, to be valued by your oppressor? Is that what revolution looks like to you? Does revolution for you look like being valued, seen, and potentially loved by your oppressor? And I think that Perfidia and Lockjaw's relationship in that very beginning, that's a question that he was beckoning revolutionaries to consider, right? Because again, she was turned on by just the idea that he might like her. Get that dick up. She was turned on by that he was turned on by her. So much so that she ate his ass. Anyway, moving forward, right? Again, we talked about how she was drinking throughout the pregnancy. Perfidia has the baby. She gives birth to the baby. When she gives birth to the baby, she goes into postpartum depression. Again, shout out to Paul Thomas Anderson for this, because he did a great job of having her narrate a montage of scenes that shows she was in postpartum depression. It starts out with her having the baby. She's laying in the bed with Bob. They're holding the baby. She's looking down at the baby and admiring the baby. But then various like short scenes, a short montage of a collection of scenes start where she's growing even more disconnected from the baby. She doesn't want the baby, and she's narrating it as though she's like talking to her family, talking to her mom. And I wrote down what she said. She said, I want to feel seen and appreciated. I carried her for 9 months. Am I weird for being jealous of my own baby? And this is Perfidia talking to like friends, her mom, expressing how she feels, which really she's describing postpartum depression. I really love that, right? I think it's important to acknowledge that journey for some Black women. I think it's important to acknowledge that not just some Black women, women as a whole, right? When people give birth, a lot of times during the postpartum experience, especially when they are in relationship and their partner is focusing heavily on the baby and not on them, that contributes to postpartum depression, not feeling seen, not feeling heard, not feeling valued, right? Now, moving forward, as a result of this postpartum depression, Perfidia decides to let him have the baby, let Bob have the baby, and she's going to go off on her own and continue the revolution. They show her hanging out with the group. Bob is at home taking care of the baby. Now, they named the baby Charlene. Okay, they named the baby Charlene. Bob and Perfidia's baby's name is Charlene. It's interesting because this is when, during this next act of radical revolution, this is when Jungle Pussy, Perfidia, and the girls, they go rob the bank. During this, that's when Jungle Pussy does her monologue or whatever. Perfidia ends up killing a cop, right? This leads to, long story short, this leads to them being captured. Now, while all of this is happening, Lockjaw and Bob ended up seeing each other. Lockjaw approaches Bob and he says, "What's the baby name?" Bob says, "Charlene." He said, and I wrote it down because I want to read the quote verbatim. Lockjaw tells Bob, "Charlene sounds like a black girl's name." He said, "You like black girls. I love them." This is Lockjaw, Sean Penn's character, the op, saying this to Bob, to Leonardo DiCaprio's character. "You like black girls. I love them." Insinuating that Bob and Perfidia naming that baby Charlene is a fetishization, right? You are fetishizing black women. That's why you named your daughter a black girl's name. See, you like black girls. I love them. Now, this is going to be important later on in the movie. They rob the bank. Perfidia kills a cop while they robbing a bank. They end up getting captured. When they get captured, Perfidia becomes an informant. She becomes a snitch. This radical revolutionary black woman who is so passionate about the revolution, she's willing to do whatever. She ends up becoming a snitch. Now, when she gets captured, that scene is crazy because the cops are celebrating. They recording her. They're around her laughing. They're recording her and everything. She has her head down. She's ashamed that she's captured, right? But again, good cinematography here, right? Shout out to Paul Thomas Anderson for that. Very good cinematography here because you really feel the weight of that scene. You feel the weight of her being embarrassed and these cops being joyful that they got the revolutionary. They have captured the revolutionary. And this is when we got to talk about Assata Shakur because this film came out the day Assata Shakur transitioned, the day she passed away. Assata Shakur is the revolutionary that they were never able to catch. She's the revolutionary that they falsely accused her of shooting a cop. Do you see the parallel here? Do you see the comparison here? Perfidia is captured after killing a cop. Assata Shakur was captured after killing a cop. The police celebrated capturing Perfidia. The police celebrated capturing Assata Shakur. The difference here is that Perfidia became an informant. Assata Shakur did not. Perfidia was in this relationship with Lockjaw, and the relationship at this point is no longer consensual because essentially what Lockjaw let her know was either you're going to rot in prison for the rest of your life and be potentially killed, or you could become an informant and you could belong to me, right? So essentially, he somewhat enslaves her by putting her in protective custody and turning her into his personal whore, as well as informant. Perfidia chooses to become his personal whore and informant. That's what she chooses. Assata Shakur chose, y'all could keep on trying me. Y'all could keep on trying to convict me. Okay, y'all convicted me. Cool. I'll sit in this prison. They abused Assata Shakur. They tortured Assata Shakur. And she stood tall and did her time until her comrades came and freed her from that prison. And she escaped to Cuba and remained free in Cuba until she died. Perfidia did the exact opposite. Perfidia chose to become an informant, become Lockjaw's whore, personal whore, sex slave, it's whatever you want to call it, and ended up having the whole French 75 disbanded because she told and because she snitched. I found it quite interesting that this film drops the day Assata Shakur transitions, and we know in real life who this radical revolutionary was, yet this is the radical revolutionary that they're showing on film. Why? And I know Paul Thomas Anderson, it was not intentional for this film to drop. He didn't know Asada Shakur was going to transition, but I think that that's the universe moving in alignment. Because again, what is the story we're trying to tell here? When I think back about to the stories of Black women revolutionaries that I admired, Asada Shakur, when she was in prison, was in love with a Black man, and they produced a beautiful daughter, right? Angela Davis was in prison, and she was in a relationship with George Jackson, a Black man who was also in prison, a part of the Soledad brothers, right? I could go down the list for days of beautiful, in wellness community, I talked about this with y'all yesterday, of beautiful Black radical revolutionary women who loved beautiful Black radical revolutionary Black men, right? Who did not take that path of selling out their revolutionary comrades, the liberation movement, etc. Why is this the story that we're telling? And not only why is this, because again, I have to keep reminding y'all, Perfidia in the book is not a Black woman. It was a choice for this story to represent a radical Black revolutionary. Why was that the choice? Why was that the choice? If you were inspired by a real radical revolutionary, point her out. Point out the radical revolutionary Black woman who was in a relationship with two white men, one of those white men being her oppressor, being the person trying to capture her, who got pregnant, who was drinking and abusing her body while pregnant, who abandoned her child, snitched on the revolutionary movement. To name the revolutionary that inspired you to do this. If there is not one that inspired you to do this, why is this the image of a radical revolutionary Black woman that you have floating in your head so much that you created a whole film about it? Why is this the image? Why is this the image? Why, when you think about a radical revolutionary Black woman, this is what you think of? That's my only question. When you could think of Angela Davis, when you could think of Asada Shakur, when you could think of Kathleen Cleaver, who was also in a relationship with a beautiful Black man, Eldridge Cleaver. Well, we ain't gonna say that. Eldridge Cleaver got his own challenges. Let me back up real quick. Let me back that up. I withdraw that last statement. Because Eldridge Cleaver got his own shit. Let's move on. Sisters like Elaine Brown, right? Elaine Brown, who was the first Black woman leader of the Black Panther Party, right? Who was in love with a beautiful Black man. Why is it that is the image of a radical revolutionary Black woman that you think of? Why is this the story you wanted to tell? Just ask it, right? But anyway, the French 75 is disbanded. Some of them are captured and in prison. Some of them end up running and escaping, but it's no more. The movie stops right here. And again, this is like the first 30 to 45 minutes of the movie. 16 years later, Perfidia's and Bob's daughter is now the lead of the film. Right? Perfidia, she ends up escaping protective custody. I forgot to say this part. She ends up escaping protective custody. Before she leaves, she writes a message on a paper that's left taped to a window. And the message on the paper to Lockjaw, who she was an informant for, helped him disband the French 75. The message on the paper is, "This Black pussy don't pop for you no more." This radical revolutionary Black woman who has abused her body, abandoned her child, become a sex slave for her oppressor, became an informant, ruined the whole revolutionary movement. Before she frees herself from her oppressor, she writes this profound message on the wall that says, "This Black pussy don't pop for you no more." Once again, I'm going to remind y'all that if Ryan Coogler would have done this, if Spike Lee or Tyler Perry or Lee Daniels or Robert Townsend or the Wayans brothers or Issa Rae or Ava DuVernay or any other Black male or female creator would have done this, y'all would have choked them out. To the guillotine, they would have went. But this movie is being called the movie of the year over Sinners. This movie is being deemed as a #1 contender for Oscars and Golden Globes over Sinners. Sit with that. Sit with that. Sit with that. Sit with that. And when the Oscars come around, and if this movie just so happens to win, I want y'all to come back to this video. I want y'all to come back to this video, and I want you to sit with that. Okay? Again, now we 16 years later, Willa, Charlene, Bob and Perfidia's daughter is now the main character of the movie. They've changed her name to Willa because now Bob and Willa, the daughter, have had to go into hiding because Perfidia had become an informant. They disbanded the French 75. They're now in hiding. And then, y'all, the rest of the 2 hours of the movie is essentially this whole thing where Colonel Lockjaw, Sean Penn's character, is joining this racist group called the Christmas Adventurers. Get into that name. The name of the Christmas Adventurers for this racist group, I found so interesting because they would say things like, "All hail Saint Nick, all hail Saint Nick." Get into the symbolism of that. And I want y'all to research Saint Nick, right? Get into the symbolism of this racist group saying all hail Saint Nick and being known as the Christmas Adventurers. Get into the symbolism of that because their whole goal is to purify the race. That's their whole goal. Their whole goal is to purify the race, to keep basically all people of color out, all Black folks out, especially purify the race. Lockjaw's goal is to join this group. When he's trying to join this group, they ask him, they said, "Have you ever been in an interracial relationship?" They didn't use that term. It was another term that they used, but they basically asked him, "Have you ever been with a person of color, specifically a Black person?" He says no. He denies it. Now, mind you, he just before, 16 years ago, told Bob, "You like Black women. I love them." He denies it when he's trying to join the Christmas Adventurers, meaning that as an oppressor, he's gotten even deeper into his desire to oppress. Once Perfidia left him, he's now gotten deeper into his desire to oppress all people, especially Black people. Now he wants to purify this race. Now he wants to join this racist hate group, which challenges this idea of radical revolution, because in their mind, that racist hate group are also radical revolutionaries in their mind. In their mind, they think they are radical revolutionaries when they're trying to make America. Oh, okay. They think they're radical revolutionaries when they're trying to purify the race. The Christmas Adventurers. What is the symbolism of Christmas? What is the connection of Christmas? Who is Saint Nick? Oh, okay. So this whole idea, and that brings in the religious component, right? The Christian component, because here we go with the spirituality aspect. Something I want y'all to remember, or maybe know if y'all didn't see the film, is that when Bob and Willa, the daughter who was once named Charlene, when Bob and Willa are in the house, there are 7-day candles, spiritual, y'all know the spiritual candles, the 7-day candles that's dedicated to the 7 African spiritual powers, who are also known as the Orishas. And it's like a rainbow candle. It's layered in rainbow colors. Each color represents an Orisha. They literally strategically have one of those sitting on the table. They have, he's burning sage in the house to symbolize that they are very spiritual and free and disconnected from religion. They're more free-flowing spiritualists, possibly even practicing some type of African traditional religion based on what we see, right? Or maybe indigenous practice based on what we see. Whereas you have these Christmas adventurers that are connected to Christian religion. So there's a challenge here between radical revolutionaries being associated with spirituality and these oppressive racist groups like the Christmas adventurers being associated with the Christian religion. That's another hidden message or another hidden theme of this film, something to consider. I said, okay, Paul, I see what you're doing here. I see what you're doing here with the sage burning and smoking and all of this. And these folks talking about all hail Saint Nick and doing that. I see what you're doing here. I like that. Okay. Now, again, the rest of the 2-hour movie is Colonel Lockjaw, who's now part of this racist group, trying to capture Bob and Willa. What they end up doing is Regina Hall characters, Deandra, she comes in and she basically, they have like the codes that they speak through. And Willa has to carry this tracking device. Through that tracking device, Deandra, Regina Hall character, finds Willa at like this school dance or whatever. She says the code to her, and the code, I wrote a part of that down too, but it's essentially like Green Acres, free body, something like that. And she says the revolution will not be televised. Shout out to Gil Scott-Heron. Shout out to Gil Scott-Heron. Shout out to Gil Scott-Heron, another revolutionary who wrote the poem, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, right? So that's like a part of their code. That's how Willa knows that this person, she says, my dad always told me if somebody says that to me, I should trust them with their life. Deandra is like, you need to trust me with your life. Let's get into Regina Hall's character. She didn't get enough time. I wish they would have centered her more and focused on her more. I wish they would have characterized her more. All we know is that she's like the peace in the film. She's like the safe space in the film, the love in the film, right? That's who she is. When they have her in the film, she's always being like a comforter. She was a comforter, a comforting friend to Perfidia. She was like the one who kind of like did the work she had to do, kind of stayed quiet, but she was just there as a means of support and community, which is another hidden theme of the film. Radical revolution is community, right? So, and this is where we're going to get to that theme, because Deandra comes and she brings Willa, she takes Willa with her because she's like, look, this person is coming. She can't give her too much detail, but she's like, things are happening. You got to come with me. Bob goes to Sensei. Sensei is this character who's like real chill, real calm. He's a Latino man. He has his shit together. He also was once a part of the first 75. He ended up escaping and not being captured and created like his own community of other revolutionaries, right? Bob goes to him, and long story short, because the rest of the 2 hours of the movie was, I was like, we could have just condensed. This movie didn't need to be 3 hours, Paul. You could have cut this down, Paul. You could have cut this down a little bit. You could have cut it down, because basically Bob, played by Leo, is trying to find his way to safety. Willa and Deandra, played by Regina Hall, they go to like this nun space where it's like a monastery where these nuns are, and nuns grow weed, and they're like radical revolutionaries as well. But what I love so much about this, that what they were trying to show was essentially the two people that Willa and Bob had to go to for safety are the two revolutionaries who from the very beginning, they valued community. They were not individualist. They were not so radical that they were not grounded in logic. They were not so radical that they were willing to sacrifice anything. The one thing that they were not willing to sacrifice is the safety of community. And at the end of the day, the real radical revolutionaries in the film ended up being Deandra, played by Regina Hall, and Sensei, played by Benicio. They ended up being the Latino man and a Black woman ended up being the safe spaces and the ones who really eventually, spoiler alert, got them to freedom, right? Because they created these communities. She had community over here with the nuns. He had community with a bunch of different people that he was able to say, even in the hospital, there's a scene where Bob gets captured and they ended up taking him to the hospital, right? So because Sensei knew the woman who had to check him in, she's giving him code, like, you're diabetic, right? He's like, yeah. She's like, you haven't taken your insulin, right? He's like, no. She's like, officer, I need you to take him to the hospital. I can't check him in. You got to take him to the emergency room. Bob goes to the emergency room. The nurse that has to take care of him, she's like, I got to check your vitals. She leans in and she's like, you need to escape out of the bathroom, go down a fire escape. Bob does it, and boom, Sensei is in the car waiting. Bob escapes, capture. So this idea that Sensei had created this whole community of like-minded revolutionaries who were doing regular jobs, like being a nurse, like being a clerk at the hospital or the clerk at the prison facility, et cetera, et cetera. Because he had community, that's why he had freedom. The fact that Deandra, who had community with the nuns and had community with other people, because she had community, that's why she had freedom. So hidden theme in the message, hidden message in the movie, or hidden theme. What does it mean to be a revolutionary, and what is real radical revolution? Is it possible that real radical revolution is community? Is it possible that real radical revolution is actually just the village? Having a village, having a community of like-minded beings that deeply desire freedom and in their own ways are doing the work in their own private positions and jobs. The clerk at the jail could be a revolutionary. The nurse at the hospital could be a revolutionary. The nun at the monastery, or whatever you call where nuns live, could be a revolutionary. Everybody in their everyday lives have the possibility to be revolutionary in their own ways. In order to be a radical revolutionary, it doesn't mean that you have to not be working and doing these crazy, radical, wild acts. A radical act looks like you being a clerk at the prison and refusing to allow a prisoner to be taken advantage of and abused. A radical act could be you being a nurse at the hospital, and when that woman comes in for that rape kit, you have a conversation with her and validate her feelings because the system tells her she's not worthy to be believed. Radical revolution looks like you looking at that woman in her eyes and saying, I believe you. Radical revolution looks like being in community with like-minded people who practice revolution like that, right? So that to me was a hidden message in the film that I received that I really did deeply enjoy. I said, okay, I see what you're doing here, right? Now, moving towards the ends of the film, because again, it's really just them like going on the run away from Lockjaw, trying to get away from Lockjaw to prevent from being captured. Willa ends up getting captured by Lockjaw. Lockjaw reveals that he, in fact, might be her father. Surprise. Perfidia, Teyana Taylor's character, was sleeping with both Lockjaw and Bob. Lockjaw reveals that he may actually be Willa's father. He takes a DNA test on the spot. He has captured Willa. He takes a DNA test. He says, if this line is straight, insinuating that she's his, he said, that's bad news because you got to come with me. Mind you, keep in mind, he's a part of this racist, race purifying group. He said, if it's not straight, you're free to go, right? Now, why would he say that? This is where we're going to get to the end. The line ends up being straight. He takes her to an indigenous person to basically be taken out and killed. That's what he does. That's what Lockjaw does with Willa. Bob, who's now escaped from being captured because of Sensei, he's on a hunt to try to go find Willa, right? And again, the cinematography is good here. It's really good here because we end up having these scenes where you have Lockjaw, who is he's trying to, because essentially Willa ends up breaking free. She ends up breaking free from the indigenous person that Lockjaw traded her to be killed. The indigenous person ends up deciding that he can't live like this. He can't live with this decision. So he helps to free Willa to the people that he took Willa to be killed. He ends up freeing Willa, right? Willa ends up escaping. Lockjaw tries to capture, Lockjaw is on his own journey. Bob is chasing Lockjaw, thinking that Willa is with Lockjaw. Actually, who is chasing Willa is a person who's a part of the Christmas Adventurers. Now, why is this happening? Because the Christmas Adventurers find out that Lockjaw, who they've allowed in, has been in this interracial relationship. They find out that he actually has not been practicing race purification. So now their goal is to kill Lockjaw and kill Willa. Okay, so they are chasing Willa. Lockjaw is trying to also get away. Bob is thinking that Willa is with Lockjaw. Long story short, they end up shooting Lockjaw. We think that Lockjaw is dead. Willa ends up going thinking she's free. The Christmas Adventurer chases Willa down. Willa ends up killing the Christmas Adventurer. So now Willa is laying in the desert with her gun after she has killed the Christmas Adventurer guy. Lockjaw's car is turned over on another road. Bob goes and sees that Lockjaw has been shot. He thinks Lockjaw is dead. He rides off to try to go find Willa. Bob ends up reuniting with Willa. Willa, she says the code. Bob is like, wait, you don't think that you don't think I'm your dad? I'm your dad. Like, I can't finish the code. I'm your dad. But then he eventually finishes the code. She runs to his arms. They end up reuniting. The beautiful part about that is this idea that, and shout out to Leonardo DiCaprio, because he says this. He says, one thing about this movie that's great is that the white man never becomes the savior, right? They never positioned Bob to end up being the savior in the movie. He wasn't able to save Perfidia. He wasn't able to save Willa. Willa had to save herself, right? This child, their biracial child, this woman had to save herself. That's kind of another hidden message in the movie, is that nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. You have to save yourself. Nobody, there's not going to be a white savior. There's not going to be somebody who falls out of the sky. You have to save yourself. And Willa had that radical revolutionary spirit from her mom. She had that radical revolutionary spirit from her dad. She had to save herself. Fast forward, final scenes, Lockjaw is actually alive. So Bob and Willa are reunited. Lockjaw is actually alive. He goes to the Christmas Adventurers for a meeting. His face is all disfigured because remember, he got shot and burned in the car or whatever. His face is disfigured, but he's alive and well. He goes to the Christmas Adventurers. Y'all, they asked Lockjaw, brilliant. Sean Penn did a great job. They asked him, they said, is it true that you were in an interracial relationship? Y'all, Lockjaw says, and this is where we bring the Jezebel trope back in. Lockjaw says, I was taken advantage of. He essentially tells this story saying that this Black woman, Perfidia, raped him and got pregnant. He says that she drugged him, mounted him, and he had no understanding of what was going on. All he knew is that he woke up with the residue on his member, which insinuated that he was taken advantage of. And they act like they accept him into the Christmas Adventurers, but essentially they take him off to a room that he thinks is his office, but it's actually a gas chamber. They release this gas through the vents that kills him. They dispose of his body in this incinerator and he's burned. And that's the end of Lockjaw. That's the end of the movie. That's how the movie ends. Bob and Willa are back in their house. Bob is back to smoking and drinking and doing his crazy wild Bob stuff, chilling, right? Willa, she gets a message over the radio that something is going on. They're about to do this radical revolutionary act. Willa has now become a radical revolutionary. She has her own group of radical revolutionary friends. The same problems are still going on. Border control issues, abortion ban, racism. Now, Willa and her friends are essentially the new French 75, one battle after another. So that's the overall theme of the movie. The overall theme of the movie is that the revolution continues. The overall theme of the movie is that the battle never ends. There's one battle after another. When the movie transitioned and said 16 years later, they said 16 years later, and nothing has changed. This idea that our ancestors were fighting against immigration issues, border control issues, abortion issues, women's rights, and civil rights, and the fact that today, many years later, many decades later, the battle continues, one battle after another. The revolution never ends. That is the theme of the movie. That's the overall theme of the movie. And I look, everybody, like, folks is like, well, that's it. That's the theme of the movie. That's how the movie ends. Willa is now essentially Perfidia. She's now the radical revolutionary daughter of two revolutionaries. And it's interesting because when Bob talked to Perfidia's mother earlier in the movie, Perfidia's mother said, my daughter comes from a line of revolutionaries, right? So again, one battle after another. This idea that the revolution never stops. This idea that radical revolution must always continue. But the question and really the hidden messages of what does the revolution look like? Now, I wrote down some of the themes that I kind of pointed out, but I want to just like sum it up here. One of the first themes I wrote down was loud versus quiet revolution. You have this loud radical revolution where they are doing these things like capturing hate groups and, all of this kind of stuff. That's radical revolution. But the quiet revolution would be Deandra, would be Sensei, who their quiet revolution was building community and being in community. The French 75 versus building community, like what Regina Hall's character was doing, Deandra, like what Benicio was doing. This idea that radical revolution doesn't always have to be loud. It can also be quiet. Also, this hidden theme of individualism versus community, right? Is it revolutionary to be an individual, right? Is it revolutionary to only worry about yourself and maybe only worry about your immediate family? Or is it more revolutionary to create villages in the midst of oppression? What is the most revolutionary act here, right? Another theme I wrote down was revolution is about fight for what you love and against what you hate. Something that I love so much throughout the movie, and this connects to the community idea. When we consider Bob's character, Perfidia was absent of the ability to love. She couldn't even fully love the French 75, so much so that she snitched on them. She turned against them. She really only deeply loved herself. And even with that, only but so much could she deeply love herself. To where you had Bob, who he loved the movement. He hated the oppressor. He loved the movement. He loved himself, and he loved that baby. And because of his love for that baby, he was able to step away from the revolution and focus on raising his child, right? So this idea of revolution is not just about hating the system and wanting to overthrow the system. What do you love? Don't be a revolutionary because you hate something. Be a revolutionary because you love something so much that you want everything around it to be better. So revolution isn't just about fighting against what you hate. It's also about fighting for what you love. And fighting for what you love really should be the foundation of your revolution, right? And then the last one I wrote down, second to last, the revolution is dependent upon people of color. The revolution is dependent upon people of color. Considering that Benicio's character, Sensei, Latino man, is who saved Bob and what really helped save Bob. And Regina Hall's character, Deandra, a Black woman, is who was able to help save Willa. And the fact that Willa saved a biracial girl saved herself. So this idea that the real revolution is deeply dependent upon people of color. But how do we feel about that? Not to say that this is a message of this is how it should be, but really a question of, is this how it should be? Should the revolution be predominantly dependent upon people of color? Or should white people also be a part of overthrowing a systemic oppression type of system, right? How do we balance that? What role do different ethnic groups play in the revolution? Right. And then the last one I wrote down, and I already said this one, is there is no savior. You have to save yourself. Right. Because again, Willa saved herself. And even all the characters who escaped from being captured after Perfidia snitched on the French 75, they saved themselves. Even Perfidia escaping from being lockjaw sex slave and an informant when she escaped protective custody, she saved herself. And at the end of the film, she ended up, Bob gave a letter to Willow, the daughter, that was from Perfidia. And she basically was like, I had to do what I had to do for me. I had to put me first, Lucius. I love you. I never thought that it would turn out this way. I hope you take care of yourself. I had to do what I had to do for me, right? And again, Willa ends up becoming a revolutionary. But this idea that even in her own way, Perfidia had to save herself, right? My only challenge with the movie is the interracial this idea or this message that interracial relationships are revolutionary. How do y'all feel about that? How do y'all feel about this idea that interracial relationships are revolutionary? Because again, it was a choice for Paul Thomas Anderson to have Wood Harris, the only Black man in the movie, who's this radical revolutionary, be in an interracial relationship with another white woman who was a radical revolutionary, and also have Perfidia, the only black woman who was in a relationship in the movie, be in relationship with two white men. That was a choice that he made because, again, the book does not, these characters are not black in the book. Why do you think that was the choice? Why do you think it was the choice for him to position radical revolution with interracial relationships? What was the message there? Do you feel that that interracial relationships are revolutionary acts? Do you feel like it is a revolutionary act to be in an interracial relationship? And I'm gonna be honest here. Wellness community, we will have a private, more in-depth conversation about this. I can see both sides. I can understand both sides. I can understand why someone may feel like being in an interracial relationship is radical revolution. I can understand why someone may feel like that because it was once illegal. It was once a part of systemic oppression that you had to practice race purification. Remember, that was the goal of the Christmas Adventurers, purifying the race, right? So I can understand why someone may feel like being in an interracial relationship is an act of revolution, right? And having a biracial child is a result of revolution. I can understand why someone may feel that way. I also have to remind y'all that Black love is revolutionary as well. Black people were not allowed to be legally married. The same way interracial couples were against the law, Black couples were also against the law. Black bodies weren't even acknowledged as human. So to acknowledge the humanity in two Black people and the humanity in the way that, or in a sense that the humanity can experience love, the possibility that these two humans can experience love, are capable of love, that is acknowledging the humanity in Black bodies, the capability to experience love. That is revolutionary. Black love is revolutionary. So in the future, Paul Thomas Anderson and any other Black creators, when you want to show love as revolutionary, Black love is enough. It's enough. It's enough. It's enough. It's enough. Okay. Also, the choice to have Perfidia's character be a Black woman in the Jezebel trope and what that looks like. In the end, like I said, Lockjaw, he told the Christmas Adventurers that that Black woman raped him. I already told, in the beginning, I explained the Jezebel trope and the desirability politics and the fact that this Jezebel trope of being the whore, of being over-sexualized, is often pushed on Black women as a means to excuse when she is sexually abused and taken advantage of. People will say she deserved it. If the Black woman is deemed as hypersexualized, always wanting sex, deemed as being scantily clad, deemed as unworthy of respect and protection, when she is raped, when she is sexually taken advantage of, like Lockjaw was doing to Perfidia when she was in protective custody, people will say she deserved it. And that is why he felt like it was okay for him to look at them and say, she raped me. Because his idea that this Black woman wanted his power, and y'all, that's how he kept referring it to. When he was talking about his dick, he was referring it to as his power. He said, she raped me because she wanted my power and she knew my power. So he viewed his white male existence and privilege as a position of power. And he felt like this Black woman, this Jezebel, this whore, they would believe that she raped him to take his power. Think about that. Think about that. And I understand that Paul Thomas Anderson's message may have been for us to have this type of conversation, that white privilege being positioned as, or being synonymous with power, and the Black woman being synonymous with being the Jezebel, the whore, and this idea that some men, specifically some white men who are deep into fetishizing Black women will make it seem like when they disrespect and take advantage of a Black woman, will make it seem like she deserved it because she's the Jezebel or because she's the whore. I don't know if his intention was to acknowledge all of that. I don't even know if he did enough research to know that. I know for sure that Paul Thomas Anderson is very intellectual. I've seen not just quite a few of his films, but I also pay attention to a lot to like the behind the scenes, and I pay attention to how people who work with directors and producers talk about them. And one thing that people always acknowledge about him is that he pays attention to everything. He pays attention to everything behind the scenes, everything in front of the camera. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he did his research and it was intentional to make Perfidia a Black woman. would love for him to expound upon his why behind that. What was your intention? Because was it worth it? Was it worth it? Was having yet another film portray Black women this way worth it? And I know some people would say, well, at least he had Deandra, at least he had Regina Hall's character. Y'all, she had all of about a total of maybe 10 minutes on the screen out of a 3-hour movie. Everything I described about her is what we can kind of like pull from the 10 minutes that she was on the screen. Okay. My thing with, if you are going to have a character to counter the negative stereotypes, at least give that character equal time as the negative stereotypical character, right? At least give them equal time if you are. So that would be my challenge to other creators. Like, I understand if you want to create a film that's going to challenge stereotypes and tropes, but have a character who counters that. This is the same thing with the wellness community. We watched The Princess and the Frog. And remember, I was telling y'all with Mama Odie's character, I would love if Mama Odie's character had the same amount of screen time as, I forget his name, but the guy that was essentially put the curse on them, right? The voodoo practitioner who was using voodoo for evil. I wish that Mama Odie's character, who was the light worker, the hoodoo light worker, I wish she would have had more screen time or the same amount of screen time and attention. Because if we are going to counter the negative stereotype with someone who actually positively represents the community, at least give it equal opportunity. But the fact that this character had so much time and so much energy and was a main focus and main character for the whole beginning of the movie, and really continued throughout the movie, because even when Willa went to the nun school, Willa the whole time, she doesn't know her mom. She thinks her mom is dead, and she thinks that her mom was like this powerful revolutionary. When she meets back up with Deandra and they go to like the monastery with the nuns, that's how she finds out that her mom was actually a rat. And Willa begins to hate her mom. When Bob gives Willa that letter, it's for Willa to find some compassion for her mother, right? And that's how she kind of starts to understand her mother. So even throughout the end of the movie, Perfidia is still brought up. She has a lot of time and attention. If you were going to combat that type of character with a positive character like Deandra, like Regina Hall's character, I would have loved for them to have equal screen time. That's my only thing. And last thing I'm going to say before I close out, Black people, we got to make a choice here. Are we going to give Black creators the same level of creative freedom to represent Black people in these types of ways or any way they want in order to give a message? Like with this film, Paul Thomas Anderson had the liberty to represent Black people any way he wanted to in order to convey a message. A Black creator would never have that freedom. And this can be very limiting because oftentimes, and I was watching a podcast with a music producer who was white, and he was saying, they were talking about like, I forgot what project it was, but they were essentially talking about some album and how on that album, the rapper was talking a lot about like drugs and killing and stuff like that. And they was like, you know, we need to stop as Black people. We need to stop. And the white producer was like, listen, man. He was like, I know I'm kind of stepping out of bounds here. He said, but to me, it just sounds like a lot of pressure to be Black. He said, in the white community, we realize that one white person does not represent the whole group. He said, but in the Black community, the way y'all talk about it is like if this one person has to take up the mantle to represent the whole group. And that can be very limiting, especially to a creative. Bringing that logic to film. Black film creators, producers, directors, cinematographers, creative directors, set design, costume, wardrobe, everybody have this pressure to represent Black people at this high level, which limits their ability to be able to tell a story like this. A Black creator could never do a film like One Battle After Another, because as I said in the beginning, if a Black creator had a film with a character like Perfidia, the Black community would be outraged. That's one. Two, if a Black creator had a film where every Black cast member that was in a relationship was in an interracial relationship, the Black community would be outraged. That's two. Three, if a Black creator created a film where the radical revolutionary Black woman was saying that her pussy was war and her pussy was a means of revolution, which has happened, Spike Lee, Chirac, the Black community was outraged. We would never allow, we as in the Black community would never allow a Black creator to get the same level of freedom that Paul Thomas Anderson, a white man, got to create a movie like this. And this movie is running up for Golden Globes and Oscars against Sinners. That's done by a Black man. Ryan Coogler had to go in his motherfucking bag, and Sinners is not inspired by a book. That is his own creative idea that he came up with, and he had to go in his bag to even be in Oscars talks like this. He had to go in his bag. Paul Thomas Anderson was able to adopt a book, turn some characters Black, and really turn one of the worst characters in the book Black. And I'm saying worse, not in a way of like, I think Perfidia as a whole is a horrible person, because I understand that there are layers to her characterization, right? And the fact that she was in postpartum depression. But when it comes to being a radical revolutionary, that was one of the worst representations of a radical revolutionary Black woman. And we don't get many representations of a radical revolutionary Black woman. We don't. I have yet to see the Assata Shakur movie. And I know that we'll probably get one now that she's dead, but motherfucker, why did you wait until she's dead? Why did you wait until she's dead to do a Assata Shakur movie? I'm gonna watch it. But this is the representation of a radical revolutionary Black woman, and Angela Davis is still alive. I have yet to see the Angela Davis movie. I saw the doc, Free Angela and All Political Prisoners, but I have yet to see the Angela Davis movie. Perfidia is the representation of a radical revolutionary Black woman. My point is, the Black community would never give a Black creator the freedom to tell this type of story about Black people. They would never. So that's something that we have to ask ourselves. Are we going to hold everybody to the same high standard of representing Black people in positive, high regard lights? Or are we going to give everybody the same freedom to show Black people as nuanced and flawed? What are we going to do here? What are we going to do? Because as long as we, as the Black community, keep allowing white creators to have a level of freedom to create and tell stories like this, while keeping the foot on the necks of Black creators and holding them to the high standard of representing them a certain way, we cannot be mad when white creators can come out with films like this and win Oscars over Black creators, because you're not giving the Black creators the freedom to create the same way you are giving white creators. You're not giving Black creators this freedom to represent all of the nuances and flaws of people, including Black people, the same way you are giving white creators. So as a community, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Are we going to hold everybody to the same high standard, or are we going to give everybody the same grace to create, the same freedom to create? What are we going to do? That's something that we have to decide. It really is. So as I was walking out of the theater for the second time, I felt even stronger about that. Like I said, this movie is layered with various themes. This movie is layered. And when I say layered with various themes, again, asking like, what is a radical revolution? What does it look like? Individualism versus community. What does it look like for a person to fight for what they love, but also fight against what they hate? How do you deal with that? How do you reconcile those two, or really combine those two to create revolution? To be a radical revolutionary, how can you be a radical revolutionary while still working in the same systemic oppression as a nurse, as a prison guard, a police officer, et cetera, et cetera? Right? How can you be a radical revolutionary while still participating in the systemic oppression? Right? So all of these things I kind of walked away from and wondered and had questions about, right? All of these things. I heavily, 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 heavily advise that everybody take a moment, watch the film for yourself, decide what are some themes and messages that you are pulling away, right? Even when it comes to the spirituality and Christianity with the Christmas adventurers versus like Bob and Willa, who clearly were like free-flowing spiritualists, burning their sage and having their 7-day candles. Even with that idea, that challenge, right? One of those hidden messages. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about the fact that they aligned Christianity with race purification and aligned free-flowing spirituality with revolution? How do you feel about that, right? So a lot came from this movie. A lot of things that I deeply had questions about and deeply wondered. Please, 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 please. I understand what you're saying. The all caps is not necessary, baby. I understand what you're saying. But let's take the foot off the gas a little bit and listen. Okay? Let's listen a little bit. Matter of fact, we're going to just... Moderators. Thank you. Thank you. But I think that's something that we need to consider here. Like I said, I promote y'all going to see it for yourself and getting some type of idea of like what you feel and what you believe. Don't just take my word for it. A lot of good conversation could come from this within your me and my tribe literally are texting about it right now. Me and my sister queens are texting about the film. We're talking about it. These conversations need to happen. The conversations about radical revolution, the conversations about the pressure of Black creatives, these types of conversations need to happen in order for us to continue to move forward. But also, how do you feel about this idea that it's one battle after another? How do you feel about this idea that the revolution will never stop because systemic oppression is not stopping? Do you think that systemic oppression will ever end? Do you think it will ever end? Do you think that systemic oppression will ever cease to exist? And if so, how? How will it cease to exist? So just a few things to consider, y'all. I just wanted to share my review, my thoughts and feels, and explain some of the things that I was seeing in the movie as far as the positives, as well as some of the things that I felt like we need to work on within our own community. You said you left with more questions. What was this his point? And I think that was his point. And honestly, y'all, that's the point of any good movie, right? I do feel like one of the reasons why this film is being discussed with Sinners is because it's leaving people with conversation, just how Sinners was. The last time I did a live review like this was for Sinners. Right? The last I always do film reviews, but the last time I did a live one like this was for Sinners. Go back and look, right? Where I broke down all of the symbolism and hidden messages in Sinners. Go back and look at that one, along with some recorded ones that I did for socials, and I did a compilation of those and put that on my channel as well. But go back and look at the live one. Sinners left us with questions. What was the message about Remick? What was the message about smoking Stack and having Stack still remain alive at the end and be a vampire? What will his future look like? Do we think that Smoke is still alive, or do we think that he really did join Annie and the baby in Ancestor Realm? What was the symbolism of having Mary be an octoroon and having her as a passing woman come back and be the first person to be turned and actually end up turning Stack, right? Like, what was the symbolism? Sinners did this exact same thing. I think any good movie should leave you walking away with more questions than answers. It should leave everybody walking away with conversation. And I think One Battle After Another did a great job of leaving everybody walking away with a deeper conversation. So again, y'all go watch it for yourself, judge for yourself. Shout out to all the actors, because I will say you got to give credit where credit is due. Although I do not agree with the character of Perfidia, Teyana Taylor acted her ass off. She did her thing with this movie, which is something that's interesting, is that people are calling this film her Monsters Ball. People are saying, oh, this is her Monsters Ball. This is her Monsters Ball. We know why they're saying that based on her relationships with Bob and Lockjaw, specifically the scene with Lockjaw where she turns him around and goes down on him from the back. So we know why they're saying that. But also I think they're saying that because Halle Berry's acting was amazing with that character. Teyana's acting was amazing with this character. She does well as Perfidia. Leo is Leo. Leo is giving us classic Leo. He does well as Bob, being that erratic, irrational, all over the place. But when it's time to get serious, like befuddled, but trying to like, I don't know the password, man, but I don't know. You know what? I'm going to call it. Like he having that type of Leo did great as well. Benicio as Sensei. Excellent. Sean Penn is Sean Penn. Sean Penn playing that like bravado, lockjaw, looks like he's about to do a line of coke and chew tobacco type of character. The acting was great. So I can't even be mad. I'm not upset that people are putting this in Oscars talks or people are comparing this to Sinners as far as like the level of impact and the hidden messages and themes. My only challenge to the community is, why do we allow this? And allow in the sense of this film with these types of characters, this type of Black representation is going up against Sinners and the beautiful Black representation that was in Sinners. And the fact that I know for sure that if a Black man would have done one battle after another, it would not be in Oscars talks. It would not. It would not. The fact that Ryan Coogler had to go in his bag of best in order to be in Oscars talks with a film that has these types of tropes and narratives, I'm just like, really? And I'm telling y'all, if this film wins over Sinners, only we as Black people would have to ask ourselves, why? 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 Not to say that we are to blame, but we have to take some accountability when you got Black folks running around here saying, I don't know. Why did you accept this type of representation from a white man, knowing that you would never accept it from a Black man? Why? Imagine comparing Perfidia to Annie. And I'm going to leave you with that. The representations of Black women, Perfidia, Annie. Y'all have a good day. Wellness community, I will see y'all tonight for our book club listening party. Okay. And if y'all have any thoughts and feels about this, we can continue this in the chat. Okay. Of the Wellness community. If you want to join the Wellness community, you can scan the QR code right here. It's only $5 a month. We do book club listening parties. We do watch parties. We have a group chat. We have all kinds of conversations like this one. Yesterday, we was talking politics and all kind of stuff. So definitely feel free to join the tribe. Like I said, you can scan the QR code right here. It's only $5 a month to join. Y'all go see this movie for yourself. Judge for yourself. Don't just take one person's word for it. Judge for yourself. Watch other reviews. Do your own review. But be introspective and let's ask ourselves why. And shout out to the radical revolutionaries of the world, like Assata Shakur, like Fred Hampton, who had a beautiful Black wife. Okay, like Angela Davis, like I could go down the list, many others, right? Shout out to the radical revolutionaries of the world, Malcolm X. Shout out to the radical revolutionaries of the world who are living and who lived and loved. Okay, much love, y'all. Wellness community. I'll see you all tonight. Peace, y'all.